Okay, people. So I have got here today the writer, director, producer, one of the stars of all the Lord's men, Andrew Burton. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good today, Kevin. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, man. Not too bad at all. So yeah, you've got a new film coming, right? All the Lord's Men. Um, yeah. I have no clue what this film was, man. I have to say, I was just kind of lost. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
interested to get into this with you, man.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a little bit surreal. Okay, that's obviously a given. I guess what I'm telling people it's about is two detectives in LA are trying to solve a murder. Um, I don't know if that came through because that wasn't my total intention, like that this has to be the clearest thing to get through to the audience. But that's kind of the log line. It's definitely supposed to be more of an experience though. Um, Kind of in the spirit of not a David Lynch film, but in that vein, just about the visuals and the music and just kind of everything that kind of composes every frame, which I hope is somewhat engaging. So it's not like a straight genre film, but it has its charms.
Yes. Like, I'm very curious how you put something like this together, though, right? Where does, like, where did the idea come from?
Well, okay, so the idea just kind of came to me. I write a lot. Almost every day I do some writing, and I have just gotten kind of used to ideas coming to me. I think the way you kind of structure your day or your life in general really kind of impacts where these ideas come from. So at the time I wrote that script, All the Lord's Men, I was listening to just kind of like 80s music. I was watching some kind of old TV, certain kind of British television shows were in my head, just kind of in my milieu while I was kind of percolating on this script. There was Miami Vice. There were just kind of these cheesy kind of cop shows I was kind of getting into, like Kung Fury, even. I don't know if you've seen that, but just kind of these like parodies of kind of 1980s detective, kind of macho guys. I don't know. I just think it's kind of like it was a fun genre to explore, and I wanted to do something which wasn't that grand a thing, but was just kind of let's make a movie which is kind of a parody but kind of serious. And yeah, I think it achieved ultimately kind of a something of an artistic status more than I think I was even going for when I started making this thing. Um, but yeah, it was inspired by just kind of everything that was around me at the time.
Okay. Yeah, no, I will definitely say that there were those kind of vibes of like some old school shows and things like that.
Yeah,
And there was a point where I was thinking, okay, so is this like, oh, are we getting kind of the production of a thing, right? And we're seeing behind the camera of like the making of kind of thing, which was my kind of thought at the very start. But then I was like, oh, I'm not sure it's that. I think it's something even crazier.
I think it's crazier, but it's not totally not that. You can certainly see elements of these cops kind of arriving to the house to do their missions, and we kind of play that the house as kind of all these other locations that the production couldn't afford. I think. I suppose a larger budget film may have sent these detectives to all these different countries or cities, but we had a house, so we were just like, okay, this house is going to be this murder scene. It's going to be this guy's house. It's going to be everything. We had the budget for a couple days in the desert at the end of the shoot, so we also had the desert in there, but we were basically just using the house as everything. Um, and yeah, I don't know if have you seen Dark Place? I think it was a Channel 4 show that got canceled after one season with Matthew Holness or whatever, and what's his name, Matt Berry.
No, I've seen a few Matt Berry shows, so
Yeah.
you do get that weird surrealism and
I
what.
was in, yeah, that's where I was mentally when I was making it, and that's a show which is like very deliberately like low budget. Let's kind of just have fun with like our one location and just see where it
Mm.
goes. So there's a bit of that in there, I think. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, no, that yes, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But it's just like, how do you? I'm just very curious how you frame this story up because it's like moving all over the place a lot of the time. Not in a, I think you can follow. I feel it's easy to follow the film, but with the way it's kind of structured, we are getting like all of these different elements all happening. So when you're putting this together, are you writing it in blocks? Do you come up with like one thread and then you're like, oh, let me put this other thread through it? Like, how is that? How's the writing coming about?
Yeah, well, I don't really outline ever. I think back when I was first starting to write quite frequently, I may have outlined, but I have since abandoned that kind of style of writing generally. And basically, I don't always know the end of a thing when I start a thing. So in this case, I did not know the end of it. I just started writing, and I thought, let's just kind of walk into this forest a bit blind and just kind of put one foot in front of the other, which is kind of the writing process in general, I think, just kind of going blindly into something because you think it might work out or maybe it's a good idea. So it's really just kind of sitting there and being happy that you got a page done because this page will lead to the next page and so on and so forth. And the script is just the result of my best judgment on every page leading to the next page. It's you know, not the larger kind of thematics, I think, which I'm still discovering, I think kind of emerge like now, really, but not when I'm writing it.
Okay.
You know?
I mean, yeah, I kind of, different people you speak to, right? So a lot of times, people will be like, oh, I had the middle and I was trying to work out, how I was going to start it, or they'll have the end and then they'll work out the other bit. So I think starting and not having an end isn't, I think, yeah, people just do these things in different ways. It's
Yeah,
just always interesting to see how different people, work out their stories and everything like that.
yeah. Well, I definitely kind of value the voice, I think, generally over, I guess, a plot. And I think that's probably more of a frequent kind of thing to say, like for novel writers, I think it's more common because it's such a long thing to write a novel that a writer will kind of be known for their voice, and no one's going to really go into this author's world necessarily because the plot is like, the most obvious kind of detective plot in the world. But, there's a voice and it kind of fills each page or just each frame with something which is a bit peculiar and hopefully somewhat interesting in a good way. So yeah, I definitely care more about just kind of being like authentic to a certain kind of voice, I think, which I think is mine, I guess. Whatever happens on the page, I'm like, is that the best I can do? Okay, cool. Let's move on. And then the thing becomes a movie, which is a whole different kind of way of writing, I think, you know?
Yeah. Like, how did you go about finding your voice? Because I guess, I think one thing that you always hear is just like, and I think you see it in writing, in acting, music, all these things, right? People have influences. And at the very beginning, you kind of ape those influences until you then discover who you are. So,
Mm.
like, how did you kind of discover, who Andrew is?
I think my writing, it started a while ago. I think I was always a bit kind of into it. Was started with novels. The first kind of like contemporary literary author I was into was a British author called Will Self. For
Oh,
have
yeah,
you've heard
yeah,
yeah, he's known these days for his like kind of modernist barrage of thoughts and words. But back in the day, he certainly wrote things which were a bit more kind of easier to comprehend. And I have read all his things. He was kind of one of the first kind of contemporary authors I was into. Things like reading War and Peace, all the Tolstoy things when I was like in grade school. Um, Devouring all of English literature basically. And then also when I was in high school, just reading scripts and anything I could get my hands on. Just doing everything to the point where these days I don't really actively seek out new movies or new books because I'm just so busy doing my own thing. And I think sort of the process of me kind of building a sort of creative infrastructure, I think I don't know. But I think it's like a process in finding your voice of peeling away the things which aren't true. Um, and I don't know. I do feel personally I've peeled away a lot of things, and when I go to write a page now, I'm always pretty sure that this feels right. I mean, it's such a feeling, kind of intuitive thing, like I have written like 4 novels which are in my drawer, um, but they're fine, and you just have to kind of. I've written a lot, and I think that's how you kind of find your voice.
yeah.
All throughout college, just doing it until you kind of emerge, and something kind of emerges, which is a bit more pure, I guess. But and then it's up to the world to be like, what do we do with this? And you know, so yeah, uh, yeah,
Yeah, no, that makes sense, man. That makes sense.
yeah.
Like, do you use music to help you kind of get into that mindset or to, help shape a scene or, just a story in general?
Yeah, okay, music's, like, big for me for sure. I think I write almost everything with some type of soundtrack. Um, when I wrote All the Lord's Men, I think it was a lot of kind of, like, Italian disco, 1980s rock and roll, David Hasselhoff, Men at Work, things like that, which I would have kind of at a medium volume while I was writing, to the point where I'm not listening to the lyrics, but there's a certain energy music gives
Mm,
you. Last night I was writing, I was listening to Alexandre Desplat, some of his scores, because that's fitting the thing I'm writing right now. Um, I'm always listening to music, and people are always shocked at how much kind of music I know, and it's just because I write so much, and I'm always listening to music while I'm writing. So music's huge, and it totally influences what happens on the page. And then when you make the movie, obviously, half of any movie is the sound and the score and the soundtrack. So, yeah, I love kind of just being in that world and always kind of figuring out more, and then even structuring scripts kind of as songs, like just in terms of repetitions or beats, or how long do we kind of withhold this story point so that when the drop comes, or the next kind of like pivotal line or plot point, it just kind of, I don't know. I think music is no different than writing or a movie. It's all the same. It's rhythm, and yeah, it's that's what it is. It's rhythm. So yeah, yeah,
yeah, man.
yeah,
No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes
yeah.
now when you come to the like, and you're listening to this music and it's helping you kind of see where this is all going. When you come to the edit, do you sometimes go, you know what? Let me put this on. So listen to something completely different to see if it shows you another way of putting it together.
Yeah, it's definitely a different thing, no matter how kind of loyal you are to the script when you're filming. I think what you emerge with is always going to be way different than what you wrote. So I definitely kind of separate those parts of the process. And yeah, when I'm coming to the edit, which is one of my favorite parts of filmmaking, you have everything put together, and then the part I really love is putting a temp score on it before I send it to the composer, so they have something like quite clear to work with. Like here's where the music is going to be, and this is what it should maybe sound like. In this case, it was a lot of just kind of Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross scores, Social Network scores, scores from Nicholas Winding Refn movies, all these types of things, and then you hand it to the composers, and they kind of you kind of let them work for a couple months, and then they show you something that you hopefully never even thought of, which is better than you could have done yourself. And yeah, so it's just kind of a dialogue with the music and the composers and everything, and it's always changing. I think as it should.
Mm. Now, are you just giving them, like you said, those reference points, or do you give them a little bit more like something like this, but I want it to do this, or this music I want it to envelop, or you know what I mean? Do you give them extra notes as well as the tracks?
Yeah, I definitely give them a pretty clear roadmap. I send them a cut of the movie with my various kind of cobbled together songs and scores from various movies or symphonies or whatever is kind of placed onto the film, like, and quite precise timing, just like this score is going to start on this person's look, this one's going to end when the camera like pans down here. It's pretty exact to try to just kind of be as exact as I can before I kind of hand it over and then relinquish that kind of bit of control. So I definitely do all I can kind of before they kind of start, so they have a pretty firm idea. But I have found so far that letting them really do their thing for a couple months without any input after that part's done is so far it's just been a great thing, just to kind of delegate that completely to them and then see what we get a couple months later. It's always a nice kind of surprise. But yeah, I try to obviously have a pretty firm idea for what it should be, and then I think that helps composers too, probably because these they could go anywhere with their music, probably. So I think, I mean, it's good to give them as precise a thing as you can.
Okay. Do you ever has there ever been a time where you got back music and you're just like, nah, that's just not right?
Yeah, not yet, honestly. I've worked with a composer now for um, four different films, feature films, and yeah, not yet. I'm sure that will happen eventually, just as a numbers thing. But so far, this little process has worked quite well, just kind of giving them what I want, and then they kind of give me something better. So that's been a lucky thing so far. But if it was atrocious, I think I would say something, and then they'd have to redo it, which would be annoying for everyone, but be good for the movie.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, for real. And is it like the same composer you're working with all the time?
Yeah, so far I've worked with Nicholas and Ezra. They are part of a duo called Room 8, composer duo from LA. Yeah, they scored the trilogy I filmed last year, Pan American. They scored all three of those films, and then All the Lord's Men they also scored. So they have been very good so far, and yeah.
Okay. Like, have you ever thought of bringing in the composer earlier on, like and working with you from the very beginning, as it were?
I think I may bring them on earlier for the next film. So far, I filmed the last four features without kind of a composer in mind, and then I got lucky just kind of meeting these guys, and we kind of spoke a similar creative language. I do think ideally going forward, I will want to work with composers as early as the first parts of pre-production. Um, yeah, because music's such a huge part of it. But yeah, so far no.
Okay. No, man. Yeah, I always find soundtracks very fascinating, and then like musical beds throughout the film and that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because I always hate it when people like when there's the music that is kind of forcing the emotion for the viewer, where I feel it's just like you should get the emotion from what you're watching, and the
Mm.
music is just an extra element, right? It's like an extra cast member
Yeah,
rather than anything else.
I I that seems like almost like the better viewpoint for music, but there's also the viewpoint which I'm kind of myself getting around to more and more, that music can almost more deliberately kind of control kind of what you're seeing, and really I think it's probably a push pull, because I think in my film so far there are scenes where I think the music drives the visual, which maybe isn't the classically preferred option, but I think in small doses, such a thing can be cool.
Mm,
I don't think it can ever really hurt, but at the same time, I totally appreciate that the story without any music should do what it needs to do. Um, but I think if you're going into a film that's more deliberately just kind of a visual sonic experience, I think then you probably have more leeway to just kind of let the dialogue between the visual and the music be a bit more kind of even-handed, I suppose. Um, but there's definitely not, in my opinion, like a right answer as far as the proportion of visual versus sonic kind of input for each scene. In this film, it is a lot of sonic all the time, which I think works.
yeah, but I kind of feel it's a different sort of thing with with this film. You know what I mean? Because I'm like those. I don't know. I would just say, oh, god damn. It's just trying to think of thing. Like, let's just take a film like Bridget Jones. All right. And you have that soundtrack going through it, but instead of right crafting the scenes and making it like they just kind of hammer you with music to go just because the film isn't really working, so you need the music. So I feel that like there's times when yeah, you can definitely use music to kind of go, yo, this is what this is, or to send you in a different direction. But I just like when you can kind of feel that the effort isn't necessarily there in the storytelling. And it's just like, you know what, let's just use the music to do that. That's what
Totally.
irritates me.
It is a little irritating, but, I definitely can sympathize with. I can see probably producers. I can understand why they would go into the editing suite and this scene's not working. Let's slap some pop music on it. It's a completely understandable thing, you know? It's like I have sympathy for it, and I just don't know, like, how much the viewers notice that stuff, so I don't it's not like they're pulling a fast one on anyone. Everyone knows that if the song a lot of the times the song is masking something. Um, I don't know. I guess if it's one scene in a movie that suddenly has a song which is doing all the work, it's probably forgivable. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah,
because these
like,
aren't yeah,
yeah,
it's
a little bit is fine, but
yeah,
it's when it's all the way through, then you're just like,
yeah. Well, that's not really movie making. At that point, you're just trying to make sure people don't turn the thing off, which is also a lot of it, but yeah. Uh, uh,
right. Like, do you give? Because I know it's like it's interesting, man. I find some people do it, but like, do you give your actors like soundtracks or musical guides for different scenes to be like, yo, I want this kind of vibe in it, or just to kind of set the tone for the day of filming?
Um, I have given actors kind of musical suggestions before, and also just kind of suggestions of videos or movies to watch. Yeah, what's coming to mind is the writer character in this movie, Larry. I did give the actor Bill Castrogiovanni like videos to watch. I think of Will Self interviews actually, because he comes across as a bit, I suppose, not pretentious, but pretentious in a lot of his interviews, in a lovely way. He's fun to listen to, but certainly I was giving him some of those interviews to kind of watch, to kind of be that type of writer, um, highfalutin kind of writer. I've done music too. I don't recall specific tracks I gave any of the actors on this one, but yeah, the idea is to give the actors a whole world to kind of live in, because their character is not going to work unless you can see that character like existing before and after this movie within a certain type of world. And then the idea of the movie is it just kind of captures the character at a tiny little segment of their life, between a whole life prior and a whole life that's going to come after. And you can't really get that for a character unless they live in a world. So yeah, I do like to basically give them as much as I can to build their world. Um, but yeah, really good actors will also do all that themselves. And yeah, I think if they're a certain level of actor at that point, they could probably just tell the director to kind of, you know, leave me alone and I'll figure it out. Because they'll build their own world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How easy do you find casting, right? That element of your
Mm.
filmmaking.
I think I, I find it enjoyable. You know, I've worked with casting directors, and I cast kind of most of my last four features just mainly kind of myself. I do like to think I have a certain eye for how cast should kind of go together, and I like to think I have a bit of an eye for talent. So far, I feel like have found kind of great actors and rounded out these casts in really good ways. So I enjoy the casting process. You basically just want to make sure the actors, kind of a good, kind of reasonably chill person is always important. And then just obviously, if it helps if they have a nice body of work. Um, so far, a lot of these kind of actors I haven't worked with haven't. I mean, I haven't worked with any A-list actors, so you have to really kind of do your research on what they've been in. But I try my best to kind of find people who I think are really good and could carry a movie at any budget level. So yeah, I love casting.
Okay. And going in, do you, for your characters, right? How much of it is like an instinct on the people that you're seeing to this character is going to be 6 foot tall, they're this build, you know what I mean? Like, is it a lot of that, or it's just you see someone you think actually that that works, that's going to fit? Or
Yeah,
other casting, you think, oh, actually, that person, I'm gonna go with them because their work, that character now will fit with that person more.
I think it is generally. I feel like it's more kind of actor led. I don't really see like any faces generally when I'm writing the thing. So I don't really know what these characters really even look like um, until I've seen enough actors, auditions, or whatever. Um, and then they kind of are the character. So it is kind of this weird kind of like blob of vibes and personality when it's on the page, and then during the casting, it kind of becomes a real thing. So yeah, I think it is kind of led ultimately by which actor you kind of bring in, and it's just it feels very intuitive. I think you just kind of know when the person's right for the role. It's just yeah, you feel it out.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's, but yeah, you've got a lot of different cast members in this, and just, you know what I mean, doing different things. So it's just like, yeah, it's curious to know how you kind of work all of that kind of stuff out. You
Yeah.
know, with the dancing, do you let people go with it, or are you like, no, I feel this character's got this style of dancing, I want to
Yeah.
see these moves?
Yeah. Yeah, I got lucky, I guess, that the actors knew. how to dance. I didn't cast anyone based off dance ability. I just kind of said, "You'll figure it out on the day," and they did. I gave them, I think, zero kind of dance direction. There was no choreographer. It was just kind of, I don't recall what I said, but they seemed to dance kind of well in the movie, I think. Um, yeah, no, I didn't cast anyone because of their dance ability, but they did okay. Um, it's not a dancing movie or a singing movie, but these people surprise you sometimes, and it's nice. Yeah.
Uh-huh. All right, no, yeah. It's because there's just so much happening in your film, like all these different kind of elements that is, what I mean, as I say, it's hard to kind of pinpoint and go, oh, it's this, because we're seeing just all of these different things happening,
Yeah,
accents and I mean, just styles and whatnot.
it's a lot of it. A lot of stuff is going on. I hope some type of experience is felt during the movie. Um, Almost like a music video will be primarily about the sensations it imparts upon the viewer. But yeah, it's a lot going on. Um, when I made it, I was also kind of in the middle of a longer shoot for the Pan American trilogy I filmed last year, also. And I think that movie also plays a bit with time, and just things kind of going on, kind of cutting back and forth. I guess between kind of like an everything now type of reality, or kind of a hyper reality, which is kind of an idea from Baudrillard, the French philosopher. He kind of talks about kind of simulations and the simulacra and kind of all that stuff. Um,
Mm,
the Pan American movies, I think, do deal a bit more with kind of just simulations and kind of past, present, future, all kind of coalescing at one point. Um, and obviously, I don't know that much about these things. I'm not like a time travel scientist, but I do think films are interesting because they can manipulate time. And I think definitely you can feel the time has been manipulated, in All the Lord's Men for sure. Um, and I guess it is trying to convey that this is the present moment for the characters in the films. They certainly kind of behave as if they're moving through time chronologically, I think. But I guess to the viewer, at times, it can look like there's a bit of time travel going on. I don't think there is, but yeah, yeah.
like how much of, you know the creation of these things are you thinking about, like what what's the viewer gonna think, right? Because I think it's fair to say that these aren't necessarily like your traditional type of films. You know what I mean? You're doing something different. You're experimenting. You're trying these new ideas in storytelling, which is fascinating. But with that, right, there is, you know, I think people not getting it. So when you're creating, are you thinking, no, this is the vision, this is what I'm putting out there? Or are you like, is the viewer gonna like it? Should I change that? Like, what's going on, man?
Well, I think I've gotten more and more attuned to the viewer. I think even when I'm writing, I'm thinking more and more about what they're going to think these days. But I think generally speaking, I have a pretty kind of friendly and optimistic kind of view of whoever my potential viewer is, and I just kind of assume that you'll figure it out. You'll know what's going on. Um, so I think I assume quite a bit of the viewer to kind of give me slash the film like the benefit of the doubt, like, oh, this is going to go somewhere, or this has to make sense. So I think I'm always I'm thinking about the viewer for sure. Um, and if I can't give them like easy plot, I hope I can at least give the viewer like entertainment, which I guess could be like a nice song or maybe the visuals cool at a certain moment in the film. So I'm thinking about the viewer, but I'm definitely kind of thinking about a viewer who is quite um, trusting of this film, I guess. So yeah, I think I like my viewer. I just yeah, it's hard to like obviously know what the viewer is going to think when you're writing or on set because they're not there. But you try. And
Um,
I think if you kind of feel that the people on set or even just you yourself are kind of somewhat pleased or enthralled with what you're writing or making, you can at least kind of assume that some of your own impressions will be the same as someone else's, some viewer. So yeah, I am thinking about that all the time. Yeah.
okay. Because
Yeah.
I kind of feel like watching things sometimes you do get a sense that, oh, they were having a lot of fun making this film, right? And that gives you a different kind of vibe with the film.
Mm.
Like some films you just think, oh, everyone looks so miserable. I don't know if they had fun on this one. You
Yeah.
know, and these sort of things I think do play into how you consume things.
Yeah, you are right about that. It's tricky because if the actor's doing their job, like you shouldn't really be able to tell if like the set vibe was great or not. Um, this set vibe was pretty good, I think. It was a bit rushed, a bit pinched because we didn't have a lot of time to shoot everything, and most people just got one or two takes for everything, which is, I think, probably a bit of pressure on an actor. And so it was a bit rushed, but I think the vibe was generally good. And yeah, you can tell though. There's some kind of ineffable kind of vibe that movies can give off when you feel like the production wasn't quite, I don't know, it wasn't flowing. Um, so yeah, you want to try to keep everyone happy and cheerful during the whole process. Make sure they kind of know like where they're going. Um, and I think yes, back to plot. It is easier to kind of talk about these difficult plot things, I guess, with actors because you can kind of speak to them on the level of like emotional truth, I guess, which is probably a bit more kind of universal and clear. So at least from an actor's point of view, I think a lot of the actors at least knew what their characters were feeling in that point in their lives. Now, so that's something which can help the vibe of the set as well. Just actors bringing their A game and knowing what they're doing.
Mm.
No.
Now, you star in this film as well, right? You write, you produce, you direct.
Yeah.
Like, how do you make all of that work? Right? There are times when those lines can blur a little bit and it gets a little confusing, or you need someone else's point of view on things.
Yes. Things can blur. Just from a directing, acting point of view. Things don't blur like in the most crazy sense. I think the most I did was you direct a scene like in a character's accent, which isn't really that distracting for anybody. But yeah, the direction and the acting is kind of they're both very kind of physical things. I think when you're on set directing or acting, kind of, I feel like they're quite athletic kind of endeavors. So I don't know. I feel like once I'm on set, they all kind of just happen somewhat seamlessly. The writing and producing parts are like way different though because they're offset. The writing and producing parts in my head are quite kind of distinct entities. Like um, I feel quite artistic when I'm in the process of writing something, but then kind of the minute it's at its final draft form and it's time to kind of gather everyone to make this thing a reality and put your producing hat on. It's those are different hats. And it's just they're different things. But yeah, I think it's nice to be able to wear multiple hats for sure.
Do you think it adds to your creative process? You know, because I think, like, the day job for me is marketing and communications, right? And I prefer roles where I look after every element, right? Rather than, because I have friends that just do digital or campaigns or SEO and things like that. And for me, I hate that, right? Because, I want to be able to see all those opportunities. I want to be able to see how everything comes together, all that connective tissue. And I think when I'm just working on one thing, it kind of stifles what I can do. It stifles my creativity. So is that kind of how you feel with, doing everything, like the acting, the directing, the writing, the producing? Does it help you create this big thing rather than feel more limited?
I think it does help a lot. I think when the director can kind of produce themselves and then produce the thing they wrote, it's just gonna feel like a more cohesive thing. Generally speaking, it's possible to do these things with kind of larger teams too, for sure. And sometimes it's better to do that. But I think it's always good, no matter how big kind of the team is, to definitely have kind of like a central kind of vision. Just for the in the case of movies, I think that is important for sure. Um, and then, yeah, I've gotten to kind of feel like the acting is also just a thing that it kind of flows out naturally from the writing process. I will write a character who I guess I feel like I could bring something to, and then I'll just kind of get into that mindset and I'll start doing it. And when you're on set, it's one. I don't know. I feel like I'm at least kind of easy to direct, vis-a-vis myself because it's me talking to myself. I feel like I can get with the program pretty quickly. So and like do what has to be done. So that kind of can help kind of for efficiency's sake, I suppose. Um, yeah, I think it's good to do these things, and kind of act like they're one thing. Um, I don't know. I think just generally too, people these days do feel more comfortable kind of doing like more than one super specialized role, because the world is just kind of, I don't know. I feel like it's just expanded in every which way possible, and there's just more to do basically. And I think humans have a lot of bandwidth more than they know, and yeah, it's good to do these things.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. No, no, no. I definitely, yeah, I definitely kind of see that. Um, do you find, right, that with the way you make films and the way you approach all of this, that a certain genre fits better for you? Or is it just like you know what I mean? You might explore all the different genres. It's just what you're feeling at that moment in time.
Yeah. I think there's definitely kind of a focus on voice, kind of whatever my kind of authentic voice is as a creator, and then letting that kind of drive the ship forward. I think in a more classic sense, probably drama slash comedy is kind of my bag. I think a dramedy. I don't think I've really gotten the hang yet of thrillers or horror or kind of a crime thing. There's certainly science fiction elements, in my stuff so far, just because there's kind of a natural interest on my part in kind of how society might change as machines kind of just become whatever they become, which I don't think will happen for a long time. But just that kind of whole side of things is a bit fascinating, and it's just kind of always in my head. But yeah, I mean, I think if everything I've written so far is kind of comedic, um, you know, at least in a dry sense. Maybe, which is a British thing. I don't know, because I've definitely kind of imbibed a lot of kind of British television. I think over the years, gotten that kind of dry humor. Um, but yeah, All the Lord's Men was supposed to be a crime movie. It ended up being surreal and comedic. So yeah, I think despite my efforts, I do end up writing things which I say that I have to write, which is a pretentious writer thing to say, but I think a lot of creators end up kind of creating the thing they had to make at that time, you know? So that's how I feel about this. Yeah.
Mm. No,
Yeah.
I definitely feel that, when you're writing and there's that two types of writing, right? Where you're just kind of forcing yourself to do stuff because you have to write this thing. And then there's those times when you just hit that kind of flow state, as it were, and it just suddenly appears, right? And I think it's those times. Are you driving the ship or is someone else driving? Because it just comes, right? It
Yeah.
just, you know what I mean? And it's not like there's an intent to do a certain thing, but when all's said and done, what's on the page is what's on the page.
It's very crazy because it does feel like anything that is good from a writing point of view, I think I always look back and I just finished a new screenplay like 2 days ago. Um, and I wrote it in about 6 days. Um, and I don't know how I wrote it, but I think it's quite good. And so I think it is just a thing where you just have to kind of be open and trusting of the process and of yourself and of the best intentions of you as a writer and the characters on the page. And I don't know, these things just kind of happen. It's really strange. You can kind of give yourself like parameters, like I want to finish this thing in the next 2 weeks, or I want to write 5 pages today. And that's kind of just what I do. I do set like kind of daily parameters, but things just kind of come. It's a weird kind of process, I think, when you kind of get into it. Um, where does the writing come from? A lot of writers, I think I've read, enough interviews with writers to just kind of know a lot of people just think it just kind of comes. Is it like a subconscious thing? I mean, it must be, but yeah. And I think it also is hugely impacted by kind of what is kind of in your life at that point in time. So it's important, I think, to definitely kind of curate certain elements of your life when you're kind of trying to make a certain creative thing, whether that be music or bedtime or movies you watch or don't watch. You know,
Mm. Yeah, no, I, I I was trying to write this, just wrap up this big campaign that I was doing at work, and I was trying to, recap it all. And so the last few weeks, I've just been sitting at my computer, and I'd written a framework, but I wasn't just like, eh, I'm not feeling it. And
Mm.
then my last day in the contract just all came to me. It just suddenly I was just like, oh no, boom boom, and I just rewrote it and had a finished piece, and I was just like, oh shit, that's the piece.
It's
But
crazy.
it took me, weeks before I could actually, find what I really wanted to say with that.
Yeah, it's kind of like you wish those things could go faster almost. And I am personally curious, like, can you speed up those 2 to 3 weeks where you have nothing? Like, can you make that go faster? I don't know. It's like I think like going for a drive or going for a walk will usually kind of help things somehow. I don't know. I don't find like just sitting at the desk for like too long without anything coming will be that productive usually. But yeah, I don't know if you can speed that kind of process up. It's weird, you know.
Yeah, yeah, no, just sitting there doesn't work. I need to do stuff, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes it's, a walk, sometimes it's the gym, sometimes it's listening to certain albums or just, going down that rabbit hole of just exploring music or
Yeah.
things like that. that can help. Like doing things like jujitsu, that used to definitely help, right? Yoga, Pilates. I think it's sometimes it's trying to open yourself up, right? Can really get things flowing. And I usually find that once I'm away from the computer and I'm doing something, then suddenly it happens. And
Totally.
then I have to get my ass back to the computer before
Yeah.
I forget.
Yeah. I know. There's an argument definitely that you should try to. I don't know. A lot of the good ideas kind of come to you when you are just kind of doing something totally unrelated and having fun. So it, and I guess then going for a walk or whatever can constitute like part of the work day. It is kind of like a work never ends, work doesn't start, doesn't stop kind of thing. With at least with the creative process, it is an all encompassing thing, 24/7. So yeah, every single thing you do in your life, I guess, is gonna help. Hopefully, this thing you're trying to write or do. It is strange because
Mm.
it's everything, and that's pressure, but also it takes the pressure off. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of think like with this stuff, when you enjoy it, right? Like I enjoy writing, like, putting together a campaign and things like that. So it's just, it doesn't necessarily feel like crazy hard work because it's like you enjoy it. You enjoy trying to tell a story. You know what I mean? So it's just like there's times when there's pressure for sure, but you know what I mean? I think, yeah, you just kind of, I don't know, you just inhabit this space, man. So it's just everything that you're doing is helping build onto what you want an end product to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it helps to just enjoy your life, I think. And yeah, being physical, I go to the gym a lot when I'm in the middle of writing, and it always helps. Just the mind body connection is very much a real thing. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely a different thing. It's
yeah,
definitely a different thing. When you're like writing dialogue, right? Does that oftentimes come through past conversations?
yeah,
Like the rhythm, not necessarily the actual words, but like the rhythm. You might be like, oh, I want it to feel like that time when this happened.
yeah. Mm, I don't think they come from actual conversations. I can't recall many conversations that I've had in real life that have felt like any conversation in my movies, which is probably a good thing. Um, I don't
So
know
you,
where
you haven't tried to write a religious text?
yeah, no. So, it's definitely a rhythm thing. I mean, I don't know where it comes from. It's a rhythm thing, though. It's a rhythm thing. I've read all the plays of Martin McDonagh, the British-Irish playwright. He's great at rhythm. Um, but I don't know if that even impacts anything I write at all. I don't know. It's a rhythm thing, though, for sure. It's a musical kind of rhythm thing, and they're not based in any conversations I've ever had. It's just, I guess, probably vaguely inspired by whatever kind of thing I'm thinking about kind of at that point in my life. And then I just kind of filter it through these characters, I guess, and it kind of becomes an exchange. Yeah, I think if you just kind of listen to the rhythm, eventually the characters will end up saying something. And yeah, you know.
Yeah. Uh Now the film's just about to drop, right? So how have you found doing the festival circuit and all of that, like the different receptions that you're getting? Like, how's all that been for you?
Well, I have been doing quite a bit of kind of a press tour around this film so far, and the reception is always a bit excited to kind of see who kind of made this thing and like why it was made in such a way. And everyone acknowledges it's a bit surreal. Um, but I think people like it. I think there's an element in the movie of kind of characters who are trying quite hard, even though they're a bit. I mean, they live in a house and kind of do nothing all day, and they can't leave the house because it's a cult. But that kind of dark kind of backstory notwithstanding, all these characters, I think, have good intentions and are trying to kind of like live their best lives, to kind of put a modern kind of phrasing upon it and just kind of be authentic. So, like the writer, the detectives who are trying to be detectives. Um, and these people, and I think people have so far responded to at least the kind of the authenticity of these characters, and just kind of respecting their kind of personal kind of trajectories and their kind of defiance of anything that kind of, the guy just spends all day writing the new Bible. That's a choice. Um, and there's folly involved for sure, but it's still something which someone can kind of tip their hat to. Like, good game, friend. You're trying to write a massively important text. Good for you. Good luck. And yeah, I mean, people respond to that because at least they can respect a guy who is trying to at least do something with his life. That said, I don't think the film really presents that guy in the most. I mean, he's not supposed to be taken that seriously, but nonetheless, it is interesting to see characters just kind of do their own thing. I think, and
Mm.
yeah, you know,
I kind of feel bad for the wife.
yeah. I don't know. I guess he had other things to do. Yeah. Yeah. I feel bad for her too, but
You know what I mean? Like, there's just the fact that there's those two scenes where she walks into the room and she's just like, I just like, ah, man.
yeah, yeah. The guy's on his own personal journey, and yeah, I feel bad for the wife as well. No,
Oh,
yeah,
shit. Oh, man. But yeah, no, like, it's definitely it's interesting because you get that kind of cult kind of vibe. He's this character trying to create this thing, but then all the other kind of stories happening. The police, and yeah, feel bad for you guys at the end. You know what I mean? But it's just like, but should we, like, what's gonna happen? There's all these kind of different plots and things. So yeah, it's an interesting, enjoyable film, and it does have you thinking. So yeah, congrats on getting this done, creating this thing that isn't like, you definitely won't be going, oh, it's so similar to, you know what I mean? Because you've done something different, which is great. I always appreciate something that's trying something new, something that's not trying to just be a clone of something else. So,
mm,
man, that's awesome. That's great. And I hope that, yeah, people vibe with this, man. I hope they
I
vibe
agree.
with it. But I'm interested to know what this new script is. Like, what you know what I mean? What's next in the Andrew Burton, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
creative process?
Well, currently on my floor in the other room, I have seven feature length screenplays printed and on the floor. It's the Chernobyl High series, which I'm going to start filming in probably February or March of next year. And it is going to be about 7 volumes of one story, so like a series of feature films. So that's kind of what I've been writing. And then also this kind of new thing without a title, which is going to be a 3 volume thing, and be quite a low budget thing just to kind of do on the side next year as well. So it sounds absurd, but that is like that's like 11, 12 movies I'm talking about right now, which are kind of they're finished and ready to be put into kind of more kind of serious stages of casting and such. So yeah, I've definitely spent the last year quite heavily writing Chernobyl High and this other thing. Um, so I've been kind of in writer mode for like the last year. But I can kind of see like the light at the end of the tunnel currently because the scripting is nearly finished and I've done quite a few revisions on these things as well. And so, yeah, I am personally kind of in the point now of kind of bringing these things into the world more or less. And starting that kind of chapter in the lives of these scripts. But yeah, I've been hard at work, just kind of in the writing mode for about a year now, and I'm still in it. But yeah, Chernobyl High is kind of the main thing I'm going to start doing soon. And it's going to be like a massive cast, a lot of locations. It'll be exciting, I think. And I'm excited because I learned so much, filming these 4 films I'm talking about now, and I'm going to bring
Mm.
that kind of knowledge to Chernobyl, and it'll be good. Yeah,
Man, that sounds great.
yeah, yeah,
That sounds great. And it's just like, hey, you know what I mean? I think when you enjoy something and you want to create, like you have to put in that work, and it's obvious you're putting in that work, right? I think too many people go, oh, I wish I could, or oh, I'd like to do, but then they just, you know, for whatever reason, they don't do the heavy lifting. So
yeah,
no, that's awesome, man. I'm looking forward to yeah, seeing these new things. And hey, when you're ready, make sure you come back and we can have another little confab about
yeah,
this new stuff.
for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of new stuff cooking. It'll be fun.
Awesome, man.
Cool.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Andrew. Thank you very much. And yeah, all the Lord's men, man. Just about to drop. Well done. And yeah, looking forward to everything that else is gonna be popping out from that crazy ass mind of yours.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the discussion. It was great to talk to you.
Also, oh, before I let you go, let people know how they can keep track of what you're doing.
Yeah, Instagram is Burton Pictures Entertainment, and my website is burtonpicturesentertainment.com. And yeah, you'll be able to find out everything about my production company slash me on the website and the Instagram. And yeah, Burton Pictures. That's where it's at.
Awesome, man. And you know what? You should start putting out some playlists so people can try and get inside that dome of yours. And
That's
uh,
probably a good idea, actually. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good. I'd like that. Yeah.
outstanding, man. Thank you very much, Andrew. Real appreciate your time.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right, man. Have a great day.